So what you want to do is you want to try to assemble a band. You want to write songs. You want to play gigs, and you need experience. So once you have ultimately 3 band members of a certain quality, 3 songs of a certain quality, 3 gigs and 3 experiences, you have become the boss.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and today we're talking Bruce, but we're also talking card games. You'll know what I'm talking about in just a minute. Joining me in a very timey-wimey episode, it is my afternoon, their very late night, are 2 of my new friends. Guests, please introduce yourselves.
Hello, Jesse. I'm Knut Johnson from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And I'm Soren Kitai, also from Copenhagen, Denmark.
All right, Knut and Soren, thank you. Please put up with me mispronouncing your names. I grew up in Louisiana, and if it doesn't end in Boudreaux or Thibodeau, I have trouble saying it. I am so happy you guys are joining me. Shout out to Ken Rosen. He's a lot to do with how we connected each other. But before we get to specifics, why don't you guys both take it little turns about a little bit about yourselves.
All right, yeah, I'll start. I'm Knut. I'm an associate professor at the Natural History Museum at the University of Copenhagen, Denmark. I work on evolutionary biology, and yeah, then in my spare time I hang out with friends and with Soren, talking about Bruce and go visit shows whenever they're back on. Visited,
yes.
What are we up to now? 19 Springsteen gigs.
20.
We got half a gig in Asbury Park when Bruce took his mum out for a dance a couple of years ago. But yeah, that's me.
All right.
Yes, and I'm Soren. I'm a journalist working with writing stories about different things. I'm working with communication. Corporate, and yeah, I'm a huge Bruce fan, like Knut, since I was a kid.
So I'd like both of you to tell me, because I have both of you here, and we're I'm trying not to keep you too late. I usually start with your musical background growing up as a kid, but I'm gonna cut to when, and Soren, start with you. When did you first discover Bruce? And what about his music spoke to you? And then Knut, I want you to say the same thing.
Okay, so when I was born in 78, and when I grew up in the 80s, my dad had a lot of records, mostly Bob Dylan, but also a couple of Bruce records. He had The River and Born in the USA. And when I was sitting on the floor, like every afternoon, looking through his records, that was something I enjoyed a lot. I always stopped at the Springsteen records. The covers, the Born USA cover especially, I was like fascinated by that guy, and I put on that record, and it spoke to me. It was like I was 7 years old, maybe. I immediately loved it, and I remember and my mother saying like, it's good that you like that guy, but it would be more practical maybe if you could like Bob Dylan instead, because your dad have more than 40 records. But it didn't make any sense to me to be logical about that. When you're into the boss, you're into the boss.
There you go. How about you, Knut?
Yeah, my narrative is slightly different in that I come out of a family that never listened much to music, or they have records and everything, and they actually did have The River when I looked through their records at some point. But I started out, with Bon Jovi and that sort of stuff. And my uncle who was into music, he, for my birthday, once gave me a Rolling Stone record, a Roxy Music record. And then he'd also asked the guy down at the record store back in the day when those existed,
Yes.
that he was going to he needed a record for this young dude. And they gave me a Public Enemy record. But I traded that for Born in the USA, but in the late 80s, in 89 or something, and went home, and it was just like, I quite liked it. Just sat there and, listened to it. But it wasn't like a big sort of revelation kind of thing. It was just, I really liked that album. Even back then, not so much Born in the USA, but some of the second half of that CD I really liked. And then it was sort of dormant for a long time. And then, for various reasons, some people sort of picked up on it along the road. And then I think Soren and I went to high school together, and just towards the end of it, it really picked up, and we started listening to it. And then the reunion tour came on in 99, and that was our first concert. Well, at least inside, not just standing outside. That was the first time we bought a ticket for a gig, first in Berlin. And then he decided to also do a gig in Copenhagen, so we bought tickets for that one. And then since then, it's been sort of rolling. So I'm a bit of a latey in that respect.
Yeah, that's great. You guys have both mentioned a couple of albums. Are there favorite albums, songs that really mean a lot to you guys? And the easy answer is all of them, but I think there's, right. Is there one, like for me, Land of Hope and Dreams is something very special to me. That song speaks to me.
I know it speaks to us too. I mean, I think if I should mention one, I would say My Hometown.
Yeah.
Because even though it's very different to grow up in Copenhagen, in the suburbs, it's like, you can still relate to it. Growing up and being with your parents, and patterns like now we're grown up and we have kids, and it's like the same story over again. And towns are changing, and society and everything. So for me, that's the one I would say.
Yeah, I have This Hard Land for the power of it.
Oh, great song. Both of them.
Glory Days for the looking back on things, and then I have A Long Time Coming, just for the sort of like, there's always hope. That's my Land of Hope and Dreams. Long Time Coming.
So Soren, and I love Long Time Coming, and the whole, I hope I don't F it up this time, right? That theory. And I think whether you're a parent or whether you're starting a new job or starting a new relationship, that let me not get in my own way this time. Let me not stumble over my feet. So that's a good choice.
But also don't worry about it. I mean, try. Keep going. Just there's always a new beginning. There's always
because Better Days is my other favorite song, and I believe that is saying enjoy the journey. That don't focus on the hereafter, focus on the here and now, right? But I think you could tie that with Long Time Coming, the same thing, like don't be afraid of restarting, that rebirth. I hadn't thought of that before, but I'm gonna have to play those two together now and kind of look at that as a 1-2 punch. Soren, you mentioned you're a teacher. Do you work Bruce and Bruce's music into your classes?
No, I'm not a teacher, to be honest.
Good. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm at university.
Yeah. Do you work that into your?
No, I don't. To be honest, I mean, I mention to a lot of people, but it's not part of my lectures or my, here's a good line from. I've sort of stayed away from that. I know some people do, but
you're a better man than I, because I figure out a way to put Bruce into almost anything I do. Now, how about you, Soren, for writing? Do you kind of weave into that? Has he influenced your writing?
No, I don't think so, but definitely I'm trying to like affect people in every sense, like every people I know,
Yeah.
My family, my friends, my also just colleagues and so on. They always know like he's into
Yeah.
Bruce, crazy about Bruce.
Yes.
They don't seem to be too annoyed about it. They more like think, okay, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool to have an idol.
Yeah.
I
All
think
right.
so
So,
too.
all right. So you guys were kind enough that you sent me a set of Becoming the Boss cards, and so I instead of me trying to clumsily describe what that is, you two tell the listeners what this card game is.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So it's a card game where the aim is to become the boss, to become a rock star. So there's 128 cards in the game. It's about writing the songs you need to become a rock star. It's about creating the band with the right quality, getting the experience, and playing the right gigs. If you do that before the other players, you become the boss. It takes about half an hour.
So songs, gigs, experience, band members.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why did you pick those 4 categories?
I think before we continue on this, it's a little bit important to mention that it all revolves around the first 3 albums: Greetings, Shuffle, and Born to Run. So we're not picking from the plus 250 songs or whatever he's done. We're only down to those 3 albums and song-wise, the outtakes associated with those albums.
So go ahead.
Which, sorry, also means that we're only dealing, well, not only, but we're not only dealing with band members that are currently in the E Street Band. We're also dealing with all the band members that could potentially have become members of, or were in the past members of Bruce Springsteen's various bands. So it's as much, I would say, a tribute or sort of a storytelling history lesson of what was it like in the Asbury Park music scene in the early 1970s.
Yeah.
So the game is the very specific thing that you can actually play with 1, 2, or 3 other players or mates or whatever, but it tells a story. It's not just playing Monopoly where you build houses and hotels.
Right.
You're walking through that whole history of Asbury Park in the early 1970s.
And what I like about this is almost, the game can be seen as an alternate history story.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Right, like, okay, what if, would he still have been the boss if he hadn't stumbled upon Clarence? Right.
Well, that's the beauty of it, because
Right.
there's always a boss when you're done playing this game.
Right.
But the major thing is he can actually become the boss without Clarence Clemens.
Yes.
It's a possibility. I mean, so this is like, that probably wouldn't happen. And maybe we should tweak the game further to make sure that you can only become the boss if you have Clarence in your band. But it's just to say that he could have become the boss with David Sanchez, with Harold Wheeler, with Richard Blackwell. We have all these players, all these band members are in there. But also a lot of songs that never made it onto the albums.
Right.
So
like there, and so the premise is you're dealt cards, you give exchange, you use cards, you discard cards, you can steal cards, you can block cards back and forth, and you're building. And this is a bad analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. If you've ever played the game Clue, right? You have to have the name, the murder weapon, and the location right to win the game. And so what you guys have built a game where maybe you've not played, you've had to play one significant gig and 3 smaller gigs, or maybe 4 medium-sized gigs to get to the point total you need. Same thing, maybe 1 significant song with some lesser songs or medium songs. And so there's different ways to build this.
Yes.
And then it's also like, it's quite, I mean, our idea is that it's also quite funny to play because it follows the story of Bruce. He's playing like also some less huge gigs like drive-in movie, bar mitzvah, trailer park, supermarket openings, things that he mentioned in his autobiography and in the Broadway show that we were lucky to see also.
Yeah, and one of the things you guys were explaining to me, right? Like I could get the card that allows me to steal. Soren has Blinded by the Light. I want that song, but you could have a tarot card that says, "Aha, nope, you can't change that," which I love that.
Exactly. We wanted to bring Madame Mary into the game. There's always talks about it, and it's mentioned over and over. And there is this spiritualism to Bruce's work that we wanted to have in there as well.
Right. There's it's once again, I'm trying to connect this, but like if you've ever played Uno, right? Yes. The wild cards are incredibly powerful, but if you get stuck with them in your hand, when the other person if you weren't able to use them, all of a sudden now you have a lot of negative points, right? So the idea of the strategy of when do I do this and when do I not gives you into the game. So as you're talking about this first 3 albums, and I certainly I'm not putting more work to you, but you could actually do a volume 2 of how do you become a global phenomenon.
Yes.
We Are the World, perform on the Grammys, tour, your stadiums, or even a later phase, perform the 9/11 memorial, do, this other things that, because in a lot of ways, I just talked about this in the podcast, the reunion tour in '99 was almost a halftime in his career. I mean, you could talk the early years, then the Born to Run, then the covers of the magazines, then there's the Born in the USA tour, then there's kind of the Darkness years where the band and him were disbanded, then the Resurgent, and then you could call it the Broadway era. There's very clear, which I think is fun to debate, which parts of it.
We have certainly thought about it, but I think you'll realize once you've played the game. Yeah. And in actual fact, and we can talk more about this later, it started out with a board game, much more complex and with many more details, which when we spoke to, when we were asked early on, could you simplify it? We said that's not going to happen. And that's what we've done now with the card game. But I think you'll realize when you play the game that it's a really, really exciting time.
Yes.
There's so much happening. There's so much, like I said, stochasticity in who becomes the band members, what songs go in. If you did that thing about, we thought about it, okay, so the next 3 or 4 albums up until, say, Born in the USA, with it would be hard to get that storyline in there. It would be more like, ooh, should I get married? Should I?
I agree.
Should I play the Giant Stadium? Should I go to Europe to play? Should I play there's a lot of real meat on this early years story that simply is not there the same way later on.
Well, and right. The idea is the name of the game is becoming the boss. So you certainly could make the argument that that the release of that 3rd album, that being on the cover of Newsweek and Time at the same time, that is when he went from this struggling singer songwriter to the boss. And so by focusing on that time period, you get this. The other thing that is wonderful about this, as I've looked at the cards is all the different, and you guys said this very well, this is also a history lesson.
Yes.
This is not built just for you. You guys travel, you're in Texas, and I go, hey, stay at my house. We're all going to see Bruce at the stadium. And so we come over and we get a few beverages and we're laughing and joking. So we play the card game, right? And we have a joke. But it could just as easily be, I do every month a poker game. And I could actually get my buddies like, okay, before we play poker, I want you to play this. And then they don't know anything about Bruce except Born in the USA and the hits. And this would be a way for them to learn more about it and experience it.
Exactly. And it's important to mention that you don't need to know anything about Bruce to play it. It's maybe more fun, probably more fun, but you don't need it. And you'll learn something.
Why did you guys originally make the board game? And then why did you change? Then why did you guys go, okay, maybe we could come up with a version that's a little more simple? Talk to me through that journey.
So it's important to say that the board game still exists. And actually both games, we released them for free. You can download them at becomingtheboss.dk, print them yourself, and you're going. So the idea came up 2.5 years ago, I think. We were in the summer house of Knut in Sweden, having a few beverages in the sun. That happened in the afternoon.
Yes, it happens.
We always talk about Bruce like every other big fan.
Sure.
And we joke about it. We laugh. We almost cry. We talk. And then, the idea, after we watched the Broadway show a couple of times, also live, it was like, I don't know, one of us just got the idea. And the other one grabbed it and said, yeah, it could be a game because, it's like a great story, how to become a rock star. And you have all these struggles. You have all these, like the depression is always like on the side
So the board game capture, I mean, we were a lot into that whole thing about the depression side of things. Mm-hmm. So we just read the autobiography and then onto the Broadway show, and we sort of had this idea that you should be able to move around Asbury Park, and we'd visited, obviously we visited Asbury Park when after having gone to the show, the Broadway show, and it was like, oh, where's the upstage? And the upstage is no longer there. And we went to Wonder Bar and Stone Pony and the Boardwalk, and was like, we should capture this in a way, in a Monopoly kind of way where you move around and you meet people and you bump into them, but at the same time, the depression, the board game has these, you pick up black balls all the time, and you need to get rid of them, otherwise you fall into the depression side of thing. So it started out on some tissues, drawing up. Kind of like this and just chatting about it, and then going home thinking more about it, drawing it up on real paper and trying to flesh out the idea.
Did either one of you have experience in designing games?
No, but Nothing. We play a lot of board games, and we do a lot of both board games and card games, and so we've seen our fair share of different.
Because I have some friends who really love playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Mm-hmm. And that where you build these campaigns and you build these characters. And I was telling him about that, and he was like, "Oh, this sounds interesting. How to play to do that." So, what were some of the missteps as you're trying to design this game and come up with what works and what doesn't?
I think the major thing is that we've created, clearly compared to all other board games, something that is very, very complex.
Okay.
And takes quite a lot of reading up on the rules and that sort of thing. So, I guess to a lot of people, you'd be like, whoa, that's, first time we played it, I think we played 8 hours and we didn't finish. And it's like, whoa, that's too much. Nobody's going to play an 8-hour board game. And it's been like cutting away, simplifying. That's one thing, right? Then, I don't know, there's also just making something that it needs to be true to the story, true to the people, true to the area. And then obviously we're not native English speaking people either. So just, writing it down the right way and getting it all together. And I mean, I dare not think about how many hours we've spent.
No, it's been kind of hard work, but we enjoyed like every minute of it. So actually, from the idea to the of the board game to actually when we released it, put it on the web page, took like 1.5 years. It was not a full-time job, but we spoke together. We still do on the phone like almost every day, and we mostly about the game.
Because I can remember it's very seldom as a kid when you played Monopoly that you actually got to the end of the game, right? Like you spent 3 or 4 hours and then your mom told you to stop and we're like, okay, who has the most money? Or, you'd play this. And so right, there can be this. And when you throw in, right, that in the early days, Bruce and them had these epic Monopoly games. So it's very much in the spirit of Bruce, you guys coming up with a board game.
That's what we kept saying, that we don't want to compromise. We don't want to make it easier or less, but playing 8 hours is just too much. But we've just returned from another trip to the summer house where we played the game, and we are down to, 2 people playing 2.5 hours. It's the board game. It's still a long game, but when you know the rules, you get it going. But so that's the board game, and then we've also reached out to various people asking, what do you think of this? And everybody has said to us, can you simplify it?
Okay.
And we've said, no way. This was our project. That was the board game. We spoke to Ken Rosen about it as well, and he said, like, would you ever consider simplifying it? And at that time, the answer was like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But then obviously, I mean, I think it still sort of goes in somehow, and you start thinking, is there a way of simplifying it? And all of a sudden, one of us came, said, maybe we could turn it into a card game like this. And it sounded easy, but we've actually, it's actually quite different now. So the band members are the same, the songs are the same, the gigs are the same, but all the rest is different. The whole gameplay and stuff like that. But this is a game. So now we have simplified.
It's 2 different games.
It's 2 very different games, but the content, the idea, the concept is not the content. The concept is the same. It's still that history lesson. It's still that. This is what happened in the 70s. This is how he became the boss. This is what it takes. This is the level of randomness to the band members that ended up becoming the E Streeters and the songs that went onto the records.
Yes. And then we also heard people saying, like, when we played with friends, they say, it's really, really cool. When we played with you guys, because we can explain it and we know the totally and so on. And of course, our hope is that fans like you, Jesse, and other fans would enjoy this play.
So I was going to ask, you guys are offering this free. It's downloadable. You go to, give me the website again, and I will put this in the show notes.
becomingtheboss.dk.
Okay.
DK for Denmark.
Yeah, so you go to Becoming the Boss DK, and there's links. You download it, the files. You take it to a printer, and if I remember correctly, too,
you get your scissors out. And
your scissors out, and
it takes a little bit of time cutting out all the cards and all the things you need, but it's well worth it.
And then, did you ever think about trying to monetize this?
We did.
Yeah.
But our main goal would be to share it with other fans, not making money on it. So that's still our aim, to get it out to people more than it is already.
Mm-hmm.
So like lately we reached out to the Asbury Park Music Foundation.
Yeah.
Offering them the game for free if they want to release it. Maybe it could support other musicians, and it would perfectly fit into the story of the game. if they could release the game, or someone else could release the game, so get it out to the people, because it would be a lot easier if people could pay like $5-10 and buy the game, and maybe it could support something good.
Well, because I was thinking the same thing, right? Like if you go to, Monmouth University that has Bruce's archives, this would be something that would be pretty cool. What kind of, now that you have the easier card game, what kind of feedback have you gotten from people?
Well, that's the thing as well. I mean, we to be quite frankly, we haven't received a lot of feedback.
Okay.
And I think also, I mean, that comes back to, monetizing the game. There's pretty much two things to it. One is that there was never any intention from the beginning. This was a fun project, a spare time project. Could we pull it off? Could we do something meaningful? The other is that if we tried to do that, would we be the guys who would have to organize everything with it? Sure. And shipping and all that? And it's just like, we don't have any experience with that.
Right.
We don't know what the market is, so there's this amount of Bruce Springsteen fans, there's this amount of people playing board games, but how many are there that do both?
Yes.
And we tried to, so we set up a Facebook page, site or profile, and have where you can comment on it, and we encourage people, if you play the game, please let us know. And there's very, very few people that have written anything back on that. We can see how many people have downloaded the board game. At least it's been a while since I looked at it, and it looks as if it's a couple of thousand people, right?
Oh, it's more than that. We had like
up to
16,000 visitors or something on the page, so it's nothing at all.
Those are visitors, but there are the people downloading. But anyway, there's quite a few people going in and probably also downloading it. But I imagine, like you, and it's been COVID times, who will I play this game with? I mean, if I saw this board game, there's only a very limited number of people that I could actually play the game with. The card game is different. Soren and I, we always, when we go out for a beer, Friday, Saturday night, we go to a bar, we sit down, we play the game. There's usually like one or two people coming over. Oh, what are you guys playing? And we've even played it with other people at the bar. So a couple of weeks ago, we went out and we played it, and these two people came over and we said, do you want to play it? And they were like, yeah, sure. And do you like Bruce? No, not particularly, but this looks interesting. And so you can play it that way with people that like, I mean, if there was a Bob Dylan game, I'd be interested in playing that too, or a Neil Young game.
Sure.
Just because of all the information, all the history that's in it, I'd like to know more about that.
So what I find interesting about this is I have a friend named Tom Zoller, and Tom writes and draws comic books, and he did a comic called the Warning Label, and the premise is that the female lead, a curse was placed on her, and if you ask her out for a date, immediately you get a warning label of all the reasons why you should not date her.
All right.
Okay. And it's available to read online free. It's a beautiful, Tom ended up, selling it as a book as well, but he was with a, there is a website, and I'm drawing a blank on it now, but I'll email you guys. So within the first couple of the first issue, the guy that Jeff, who she's thinking about dating, determines that if she works through her problems, that part of the warning label is removed.
All right.
So the romance story, the reason I'm telling you this is she in the comic works for a game company, and she comes up with the Long Con, and it is basically a card game building your own comic book convention.
All right.
Which is right, like you have to get a venue, and the better the venue, and then you have to get guests, and you have to have events, and it is a card game, and you end up building that the winner has the most successful comic convention. So when you guys were telling this, I'm like, oh, that's Tom's game. I mean, it's similar type of thing. And he just invented it in the book. And then someone said, oh man, that sounds like a fun game. Let's play it. And he's like, I don't do the game. This is just this, I'm just telling a story. So he ended up finding someone who did design games, and they kind of did that in person. So the thing I like about this is I do think that if you are someone, and there are people like yourselves that love, like when you get together, instead of watching a sporting event or just having dinner, you play games. You play games with your friends, and this would be a fun game to do. So I am going to get a bunch of people over, and we are going to do this, and I'm going to give you a field trip. I will give you a report card. That is great.
But I mean, in all honesty, both the board game and the card game, I mean, we have borrowed a ton from all sorts of other card games and board games. I mean, we didn't start out from scratch in that respect. We've totally taken what we could use from all the other
absolutely.
So we didn't invent these games. We've just sort of adapted our idea into already existing gaming frameworks, really.
Yeah, this is, I was already intrigued, but after visiting with you both, I'm now just, I'm trying to figure out who I can get to have this. This sounds fun. Any other thoughts about the game you want to share me before we start wrapping it up?
Have we covered?
I think more or less.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I mean, the next thing really is, who's up for a game?
Yeah, exactly. All right. When Bruce tours again,
when?
When? What are songs that you both are chasing? What are songs you want to see live that you haven't got to hear yet?
Ooh. That would be all the latest albums.
Yes, I almost usually excluding Western Stars or Letter to You, right? We all want to see those. But are there other songs, like, have you been able to hear, Promised Land or Long Time Coming?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think we have a particular bucket list at this stage.
Okay.
We made a spreadsheet once of the songs we'd heard and how many times, and Promised Land is definitely one of the most played songs, at least the reunion tour. But I mean, I think I'd get back to my early list of This Hard Land and Glory Days and Long Time Coming. More of those. But I don't know about you, Soren.
No, it's a tough one.
But I think it also depends on what sort of lineup he's going to come out with.
Yes.
Will it be like the E Street Grand tour? Or will it be like more of a scaled down thing? Or because there are so many different versions, right? And also, whether is he going to bring out the grand piano for slowed down versions of good old rock and roll songs? So there's a lot of variety in there as well. I'm not chasing something in particular.
We just want to see the boss. Bruce, friend or uncle.
Yes.
Soon.
Yeah, I guess we all are. All right.
And actually, if I can mention one thing, our aim from the beginning of this process of creating the game was we're not going to stop pitching the game until we know that Bruce have seen it, at least.
Yes. How fun would it be to think of Patty, Bruce, Little Steven, Maureen, all in it, or Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, Bruce and, Michelle and Barack Obama, all at the table and like, hey, let's play Be the Boss, right?
Again.
That would be awesome. All
Yeah.
right. Talk to me. I end every episode with the Mary question. So if you are listening because you're fans of these two guys, you probably do not know what the Mary question is. So let me give you a little preference. Jay Armstrong is a former honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He has recently written a book called Bedtime Stories for the Living. But when he was a teacher, he would spend 2 days breaking apart Thunder Road as a poem. They would look at the imagery, the lyrics. They can compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. And at the end of the 2 days, he asked the question to his class, does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road? That is your question.
I was actually prepared for that question, I must
Okay.
admit.
All right.
I think yes.
Okay.
She gets in.
And you want to explain why?
No, I'm just pretty sure it's going to be a good ending.
Okay, you're just going to say yes. All right, Canuck?
Mary climb in. It's a time full of losers. We're pulling out here to win. Is that the one?
Yes.
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah. Ooh, that's the half full, half empty glass, right?
Yes, it is.
I see it as a positive, optimistic way forward as well. So I'd probably say, yeah, she's climbing in.
Very nice. Yeah, I love that. Because it really is that. And 60% of my listeners, the people who join me, say yes, but about 40% say no.
Yeah.
They say she's too afraid. She won't take that chance. So very well, nice. All right.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Becoming the boss DK, right?
DK, yes.
Go there, reach out to these guys if you have any questions. Let me know if you've played the game. And if you live in the Dallas area, send me an email so we can figure out a game time so we can play. Any other contact information you want to give? Go to the website if they need anything.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you both for joining me. Listeners, go get vaccinated, go get boosted. And during these incredibly crazy times, let's all be kind to each other because that's how we're going to get through this. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Doing a podcast at times can be a one-way conversation, and I hate that. So please let me know what you like and don't like about the work I'm doing. You can reach the podcast via email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. The show is on Twitter at setlistingbruce, and my personal Twitter is at jessejacksondfw. We have a website, www.setlistingbruce.com. From there, you can find links to other Springsteen podcasts as well as other music-themed podcasts. We have a page devoted to our own SLB All-Star Band. These are guests who have been on the podcast more than 3 times. There is a link to our store where you can purchase Set Listing Bruce shirts, as well as a Mary Question t-shirt. There is a link to our Patreon page where you can sign up to help support the podcast financially. We have different levels and different rewards based on your support. If you don't have any extra cash, and right now who does, you can support the podcast by subscribing via your favorite podcast player and leaving us a review. The more reviews we have, the easier it is for people to find us. And please tell a friend about the podcast, especially if they love Bruce or music, because it will make a difference.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.
Bruce Springsteen Live provides fans with an intimate look into Springsteen's creative process. The Bruce Springsteen Live exhibit opens at the Woody Guthrie Center on Saturday, April 16th, running through Sunday, September 25th. The exhibit will feature iconic artifacts, live performance footage, instruments, stage costumes, exclusive interviews, concert posters, and photography, as well as unique interactive displays to immerse fans in Bruce Springsteen and the band's creative process. More information can be found at WoodyGuthrieCenter.org. Please let them know that Set Listing Bruce sent you there, and I'll see you in Tulsa.